The warm afternoon sun streamed through the airport's floor-to-ceiling windows as Patricia Chen made her way through the bustling terminal. As the CEO of one of the largest tech companies in Silicon Valley, she was used to catching flights for business meetings across the globe. Today's destination was a crucial board meeting in New York, where she'd be presenting her company's latest breakthrough in artificial intelligence. At 45, Patricia had built her empire from scratch. Starting with just a small coding project in her garage 15 years ago, she had transformed it into a multi-billion-dollar corporation. But success hadn't changed her modest nature. She still wore simple, elegant clothes and carried her favorite worn leather laptop bag, a reminder of her early startup days. As she approached the check-in counter, Patricia noticed the usual mix of business travelers and families hurrying to their gates. She'd flown this route countless times, always booking first class to ensure she could work comfortably during the 6-hour flight. The attendant at the counter, a young man with an obviously forced smile, barely looked up as she handed over her ID and first-class ticket. "I'm sorry, but there seems to be an issue with your ticket," he said, his tone dismissive. "The first-class section is fully booked." Patricia furrowed her brow, knowing she'd confirmed her reservation just that morning. She pulled out her phone, showing him the confirmation email. "There must be some mistake," she said calmly. "I received confirmation of my first-class seat yesterday, and I checked again this morning." The attendant's eyes flickered between her and his computer screen, his expression growing increasingly uncomfortable. Just then, a well-dressed businessman walked up to the counter next to them. The same attendant immediately brightened, greeting him warmly and processing his first-class ticket without hesitation. Patricia watched this exchange with growing awareness of what was really happening. She'd faced similar situations before, especially in her early career days. Even now, as one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in the country, some people still saw her only through the lens of their prejudices. But years of experience had taught her that the best response wasn't anger, it was something far more powerful. Taking a deep breath, Patricia pulled out her phone again, this time opening her company's profile page. "I think there might be some confusion," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I'm Patricia Chen, CEO of TechFusion Global. Would you mind double-checking the passenger list?" The attendant's face went pale as recognition dawned. TechFusion Global was a household name, and Patricia's recent feature in Forbes magazine had made headlines. He frantically began typing on his keyboard, his earlier dismissive attitude completely evaporating. "Ms. Chen, I'm so sorry," he stammered, his face flushing red. "There appears to have been a system error. Your first-class seat is actually available." But Patricia wasn't finished. This moment wasn't just about her, it was about every person who'd ever been judged based on their appearance rather than their character. She pulled out her business card and handed it to the flustered attendant. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor," she said, not with anger but with purpose. "Not to file a complaint, but to discuss implementing better training programs for your staff. My company has developed some excellent diversity and inclusion modules that we'd be happy to share." The other passengers nearby had stopped to watch the scene unfold. Among them was a young black girl, probably no more than 12, who was watching Patricia with wide-eyed admiration. Patricia caught her eye and smiled warmly, knowing that sometimes the most important victories were the ones that inspired others. As she waited for the supervisor, Patricia reflected on her journey. She'd built her tech empire not just to create innovative products, but to change the very landscape of what leadership looked like in Silicon Valley. Every challenge, every dismissal, every underestimation had only fueled her determination to succeed, not just for herself, but for every person who'd ever been told they didn't belong. The supervisor arrived quickly, profusely apologizing for the incident. Patricia maintained her composure, turning what could have been a moment of conflict into an opportunity for positive change. She didn't want revenge or public shaming, she wanted progress. The story of what happened next spread through the airport like wildfire. As Patricia sat in the first-class lounge, responding to emails on her laptop, she couldn't help but notice the whispers and admiring glances from other travelers. But her mind was already racing with ideas for something bigger than just this single incident. Her phone buzzed with a notification. The social media posts about what had just happened were already gaining traction. Someone had recorded the entire exchange and posted it online. Patricia wasn't usually one for viral fame, but she recognized an opportunity when she saw one. Opening her laptop, she began drafting an email to her executive team. "Let's turn this moment into a movement," she typed. Her company had been working on an initiative to promote diversity in tech education, and this incident had given her an idea for expanding it. A gentle tap on her shoulder interrupted her thoughts. It was the young girl who had been watching earlier, now accompanied by her mother. "Excuse me, Ms. Chen," the mother said softly. "My daughter Olivia hasn't stopped talking about what she saw. Would you mind if she asked you a few questions?" Patricia's face lit up with a warm smile. She closed her laptop and gestured for them to sit. "Of course. I'd love to chat." Olivia, still shy but determined, sat down with wide eyes full of curiosity. "How did you stay so calm?" Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "When people are mean to me at school because I'm different, I sometimes get angry or cry." Patricia leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "You know, Olivia, I wasn't always calm in these situations. When I started my company, I used to get so frustrated when people wouldn't take me seriously. But I learned something important: success is the best answer to discrimination." She pulled out a small notebook from her bag and wrote down her email address. "I want you to email me about your dreams, Olivia. What do you want to be when you grow up?" "I love computers," Olivia exclaimed, her shyness momentarily forgotten. "I'm learning to code on my school's computer, but it's really old and slow." Patricia's eyes sparkled with inspiration. She turned to Olivia's mother. "With your permission, I'd like to send Olivia a new laptop. But more than that, I'd like to invite her to our company's Young Coders program." The mother's eyes welled up with tears. "That's too generous, we couldn't possibly." "It's not generosity," Patricia interrupted gently. "It's investment in the future. Every child with a dream deserves the tools to achieve it." She pulled out another business card and handed it to the mother. "Please, let me know when Olivia is ready to start." The boarding announcement for her flight interrupted their conversation. As Patricia gathered her things, she couldn't shake the feeling that this day was about to lead to something much bigger than a single act of discrimination or its aftermath. On the plane, settled comfortably in her first-class seat, Patricia opened her laptop again. The incident had crystallized something she'd been thinking about for months. Her company had the resources and influence to make real change, not just in tech but in how society viewed and treated people of color in positions of power. She began typing out a proposal for a new initiative, a nationwide program to provide technology education and mentorship to underserved communities. The program would include not just coding classes and equipment, but also leadership training and psychological support to help young people navigate the challenges she had faced. The flight attendant who served her coffee did a double-take when he saw her name on the passenger list. Word had clearly spread about the incident at check-in. But instead of awkwardness, he showed genuine interest in her work, sharing that his daughter was also interested in technology. Patricia spent the rest of the flight alternating between refining her proposal and chatting with curious fellow passengers who approached her seat. Each conversation reinforced her belief that change happened not through confrontation, but through connection. By the time the plane began its descent into New York, she had outlined a comprehensive plan. The board meeting tomorrow would now have an additional agenda item. She would use her platform not just to present her company's latest tech innovations, but to propose a bold new direction for corporate responsibility. As she gathered her belongings to deplane, Patricia noticed the businessman from the check-in counter watching her from his seat across the aisle. He had been notably quiet during the flight, perhaps reflecting on what he had witnessed earlier. She caught his eye and gave him a small nod. He looked away quickly, but she saw the shame in his expression. Walking through JFK Airport, Patricia's phone was flooded with messages. The video of the incident had gone viral, with millions of views and thousands of supportive comments. But what caught her attention were the messages from other successful people of color sharing similar experiences. In her waiting car, Patricia made a decision. This wasn't going to be just another viral moment that faded away. She would use this spotlight to create lasting change. The car pulled away from the curb, carrying her toward a future that suddenly seemed filled with even more purpose than before. The next morning, Patricia stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of her hotel suite, watching the sun rise over Manhattan's skyline. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing since yesterday. The video of the airport incident had reached over 20 million views overnight, and major news networks were requesting interviews. But Patricia's focus was on the board meeting ahead. She'd spent half the night refining her proposal, fueled by coffee and determination. Her assistant had already sent over the latest social media statistics. #TechFusionEquality was trending nationwide, and thousands of people were sharing their own stories of discrimination in corporate spaces. As she adjusted her blazer and gathered her presentation materials, Patricia's phone lit up with a special notification. It was an email from Olivia, the young girl from the airport. She'd already started learning Python through online tutorials and wanted to show Patricia her first piece of code. A warm smile spread across Patricia's face as she typed a quick, encouraging response. The TechFusion New York office occupied 3 floors of a gleaming skyscraper in Manhattan. As Patricia's car pulled up to the building, she noticed a small group of reporters waiting outside. News traveled fast in the digital age. Her security team moved efficiently, creating a path through the crowd as cameras flashed and questions flew at her from all directions. Ms. Chen, what message do you have for the airline? Will you be taking legal action? How do you respond to those saying you used your status to intimidate airline staff? Patricia paused briefly, turning to face the cameras with composed confidence. This isn't about one incident or one airline, she said clearly. It's about creating systematic change. Watch what we do next. With that, she strode into the building, leaving the reporters buzzing with speculation. In the elevator riding up to the boardroom, Patricia checked her presentation one last time. Besides the planned AI breakthrough announcement, she had added slides for her new initiative, the TechFusion Future Leaders Program. It would be the largest corporate investment in diversity and education in tech history. The boardroom fell silent as she entered. The usual pre-meeting chatter ceased as all eyes turned to her. Many board members had already seen the viral video, and their expressions ranged from concern to curiosity. Mr. Wong, the board's chairman and her longtime mentor, gave her an encouraging nod. Before we begin our scheduled presentation, Patricia started, her voice steady and confident, I want to address what happened yesterday and present an opportunity that has emerged from it. She clicked to the first slide, showing the social media statistics and press coverage. Yesterday's incident has sparked a national conversation. But instead of focusing on the negative, I propose we channel this attention into something transformative. She moved through her slides, outlining the comprehensive program she'd developed overnight. The initiative would include partnering with 1,000 schools in underserved communities, providing state-of-the-art computer labs, coding bootcamps, and mentorship programs. It would also establish a scholarship fund for minority students pursuing careers in tech, and create a leadership academy specifically designed to prepare young people of color for executive positions. The estimated cost for the first year would be $500 million, Patricia concluded, letting the number hang in the air. She could see some board members shifting uncomfortably in their seats. It was a bold ask, even for a company of their size. Mr. Wong leaned forward, breaking the tense silence. You're proposing we use $500 million to respond to a viral video? Patricia met his gaze steadily. No, sir. I'm proposing we use a viral video as catalyst to do what we should have done years ago. This isn't just about corporate responsibility, it's about shaping the future of our industry. She pulled up a slide showing industry diversity statistics. Look at these numbers. They haven't significantly changed in a decade. We have the resources and now we have the world's attention. It's time to do more than just talk about change. The room erupted in discussion. Some board members raised concerns about the budget and timeline, while others saw the potential for both social impact and positive PR. Patricia stood quietly, letting them debate, knowing that sometimes the most powerful move was to let others convince themselves. Finally, Mr. Wong raised his hand for silence. Yesterday, we watched you handle discrimination with grace and wisdom. Today, you're showing us how to turn a moment into a movement. He paused, looking around the room. I move to approve the full budget for the TechFusion Future Leaders program. The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was decisive enough. As Patricia walked out of the boardroom 2 hours later, her phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. The airline's CEO had requested an urgent meeting, and #TechFusion Equality had now reached international trending status. In the elevator down to her office, Patricia allowed herself a moment to breathe. The real work was just beginning. She thought about Olivia and the millions of other young people who needed someone to believe in them. Sometimes, the worst moments in life led to the best opportunities to create change. Later that afternoon, Patricia sat across from Robert Harrison, the airline's CEO, in her temporary office at TechFusion's New York headquarters. The contrast between them was striking. He was visibly nervous, constantly adjusting his tie, while she remained perfectly composed, her hands folded calmly on the desk. Ms. Chen, on behalf of our entire organization, I want to express our deepest apologies for yesterday's incident, Harrison began, his words carefully chosen. We've already suspended the employee in question and... Patricia raised her hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Mr. Harrison, I didn't agree to this meeting to hear about punitive actions against your staff. That won't solve the underlying problem. She opened her laptop, turning it to face him. I have a different proposal. On the screen was a comprehensive training program she'd outlined, combining TechFusion's AI technology with bias recognition and cultural sensitivity training. It was designed to be implemented across the airline's entire workforce, from ground staff to executives. Your airline has the opportunity to be a leader in changing how the travel industry treats all passengers, Patricia explained, her voice firm but encouraging. Instead of just reacting to incidents, you could help prevent them. Harrison leaned forward, his expression shifting from defensive to intrigued. This is extensive. The cost of implementing something like this will be significantly less than the potential loss of business and reputation damage from incidents like yesterday's. Patricia completed his thought. TechFusion is willing to provide the initial technology and training framework at cost. Consider it an investment in both our futures. As they discussed the details, Patricia's phone lit up with another email from Olivia. The young girl had completed her first small coding project, a simple calculator. Glancing at the email brought a fresh wave of purpose to Patricia's negotiations with Harrison. There's one more thing, Patricia added, pulling up another document. I want your airline to partner with TechFusion's Future Leaders program. We'll provide travel for our student participants, and in return, your staff gets first-hand experience interacting with the next generation of diverse tech leaders. Harrison sat back, a slow smile spreading across his face. You've turned this whole situation around on us, haven't you? Instead of filing lawsuits or demanding resignations, you're offering us a chance to be part of the solution. Exactly, Patricia nodded. Change doesn't happen through punishment alone. It happens through education, opportunity, and collaboration. After Harrison left, Patricia's assistant rushed in with urgent news. The story had caught the attention of the White House, and the president wanted to discuss incorporating elements of the TechFusion Future Leaders program into a national education initiative. Patricia walked to the window, looking out at the city below. In just 48 hours, what had started as a humiliating incident was transforming into a nationwide movement. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from her mother. "I saw the news," her mother's text read. "Your father would have been so proud. Remember how he always said, success is the best revenge, but helping others succeed is even better?" Tears welled up in Patricia's eyes as she remembered her father, a brilliant engineer who had faced similar discrimination throughout his career. He had passed away just months before she landed her first major investment for TechFusion. His words had guided her through every challenge since then. The rest of the afternoon was a whirlwind of calls and meetings. Education officials from 3 different states reached out about piloting the Future Leaders program in their districts. Silicon Valley's biggest names were pledging support and resources. Even some of Patricia's longtime competitors were joining the movement. As evening approached, Patricia received an unexpected visitor, the young check-in attendant from the airport, accompanied by his supervisor. The young man, she learned, had asked specifically to apologize in person. "Ms. Chen," he began, his voice shaking. "I've spent the last day thinking about my actions, and I'm truly sorry. I didn't realize my own biases until I saw myself in that video." Patricia studied him thoughtfully. "What's your background?" she asked, surprising both him and his supervisor. I'm studying computer science part-time while working here," he admitted. "But it's taking forever because I can only afford one class at a time." Patricia opened her desk drawer and pulled out a business card. "Send me your transcript and schedule. If you're serious about learning from this experience, TechFusion has a work-study program that might interest you. Sometimes the people who learn the hardest lessons become the best advocates for change." The young man's eyes widened in disbelief. His supervisor looked equally shocked. This wasn't just forgiveness, it was another opportunity for transformation. After they left, Patricia finally allowed herself to feel the exhaustion of the past 2 days. But as she packed up her things to head back to her hotel, her phone lit up one last time. It was a video message from Olivia, proudly showing off her calculator program. "Ms. Chen, look. I did it." Olivia's excited voice filled the office. "And guess what? 3 other girls in my class asked me to teach them coding too. We're starting a lunch club." Patricia smiled, her fatigue momentarily forgotten. This was why she had chosen to respond to discrimination with opportunity rather than anger. Every changed mind, every inspired child, every new initiative was a step toward the world she envisioned, one where talent and determination mattered more than appearance or background. The next morning, Patricia woke up to a notification that would change everything. Overnight, several other major tech companies had announced their own diversity initiatives, directly inspired by TechFusion's program. The movement she'd started was spreading like wildfire through Silicon Valley. As she sipped her morning coffee in the hotel suite, watching the sunrise over Manhattan, her phone rang. It was Li Wei, her childhood friend and now CEO of a major Asian tech corporation. "Patricia, you've started something big," Li Wei said without preamble. "My board just approved a similar program for Asia. We want to partner with TechFusion." Patricia felt a surge of emotion. She and Li Wei had supported each other since their college days, when they were often the only women of color in their engineering classes. "Send me the details," she replied, already thinking of the possibilities. This could be global. Her assistant knocked on the door, entering with a tablet displaying the morning's news coverage. The headlines were overwhelming. TechFusion's $500 million diversity program sparks global movement. Tech giants follow Chen's lead in massive education initiative. From airport incident to international impact, how one CEO changed the game. But it was a smaller headline, from a local New York paper, that caught Patricia's attention. Local middle school girls' coding club membership triples after TechFusion CEO's viral story. The article featured a photo of Olivia and her new coding club members, all beaming at the camera. Patricia's schedule for the day was packed. First, a virtual meeting with her development team about adapting their AI training modules for the airline staff. Then, a working lunch with education experts to refine the Future Leaders program curriculum. But she made sure to block out time for one special appointment, a video call with Olivia's coding club. During the morning meeting, Patricia's team presented their progress on the airline training modules. They'd developed an innovative VR simulation that put employees in the shoes of passengers facing discrimination. This isn't just about teaching what not to do, the project lead explained. It's about creating genuine empathy. The education experts brought fresh perspectives to the lunch meeting. Dr. Rodriguez, a specialist in youth development, emphasized the importance of mentorship. These kids don't just need computers, she explained, they need to see themselves in their teachers and mentors. Patricia thought about her own journey, about all the doors that had been closed in her face before she built her own door. What if we created a mentor matching system, she suggested. Using our AI to connect students with professionals who share similar backgrounds and experiences? The afternoon video call with Olivia's coding club was a highlight of her day. 15 eager faces crowded the screen, all talking over each other in their excitement to share their projects. Patricia noticed that the group was beautifully diverse, a rainbow of faces united by their enthusiasm for technology. Ms. Chen, one girl asked shyly, "My mom says I can't be a programmer because that's for boys. What should I tell her?" Patricia leaned closer to the camera. "Tell her to watch out, because in 10 years, you might be running your own tech company. And tell her I'd be happy to speak with her about what the future of technology really looks like." After the call, Patricia received an unexpected email from the check-in attendant she'd offered the work-study program to. He'd attached his transcript and a heartfelt letter describing how the incident had changed his perspective. "I want to be part of the solution," he wrote. "I want to help build the programs that prevent others from making the same mistakes I did." That evening, Patricia had dinner with Mr. Wang, her board chairman, at a small Chinese restaurant he'd known since his own early days in New York. Over dumplings and green tea, they discussed the whirlwind of the past few days. "You know," Mr. Wang said, his eyes twinkling, "when you first pitched TechFusion to me 15 years ago, you said you wanted to change the world. I believed you then, but I don't think either of us imagined it quite like this." Patricia smiled, remembering that first meeting, how nervous she'd been, how desperate to prove herself. "Sometimes the universe has its own plans," she replied. "We just have to be ready to seize the moment when it comes." Their conversation was interrupted by their waitress, an elderly Chinese woman who had been watching Patricia all evening. "I saw you on the news," she said quietly. "My granddaughter cut out your picture from the newspaper. She carries it in her backpack now. She says she wants to be like you when she grows up." Patricia felt tears welling up in her eyes. This was the real measure of success, not the billions in her bank account or the global headlines, but the little girls who now dared to dream bigger because of her story. As she returned to her hotel that night, Patricia received one final message. It was from her mother, sharing a photo of her father's old engineering notebook. On the first page, he had written, "Dream big, work hard, lift others." Below the photo, her mother had added, "He always said you would do great things. But I don't think even he imagined you would help so many others do great things too." Patricia stood at her hotel window, looking out at the city lights. In just a few days, an humiliating incident had transformed into a movement that was changing lives. She thought about Olivia's coding club, the airline's new training program, the global partnerships forming, and all the young dreamers who now saw a future they hadn't imagined before. A week had passed since the airport incident, and Patricia was back in her Silicon Valley office. The wall of screens in her executive suite displayed news channels from around the world, all discussing the ripple effects of the TechFusion Future Leaders program. But it was the email on her computer screen that had her full attention. "Dear Ms. Chen," it began. "My name is Aisha, and I'm a janitor at one of your partner schools in Detroit. Every day after my shift, I see the kids in the new computer lab you provided. Yesterday, my daughter joined them. She's 12, and it's the first time I've seen her excited about staying after school. Thank you for giving her a chance I never had." Patricia glanced at the framed photo on her desk, her father in his engineering lab, smiling proudly. Next to it sat a new addition, a hand-drawn card from Olivia's coding club, signed by all 15 members. These reminders of why she started this journey helped her face the challenges that were emerging. Not everyone was celebrating her success. Some critics claimed it was all a publicity stunt. Others argued that private companies shouldn't have such influence over education. That morning's newspaper included an opinion piece suggesting that TechFusion was creating dependency rather than real change. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Her chief financial officer entered, looking concerned. "Patricia, we need to talk about the budget. The program's costs are running higher than projected. 5 more school districts just requested partnerships, and the training infrastructure needs expansion." Patricia pulled up the company's financial projections. "Show me the numbers," she said calmly. As they dove into the spreadsheets, her mind was already formulating solutions. She'd faced bigger challenges building TechFusion from scratch. By lunchtime, she'd restructured the program's funding model, creating a sustainable framework that could support expansion. She'd also reached out to her network of tech leaders, securing additional support and resources. The movement was bigger than TechFusion now, it belonged to everyone. Her afternoon included a video conference with the airline's board. Their implementation of the new training program was showing promising results. Customer satisfaction scores were up, and employee feedback was overwhelmingly positive. The young check-in attendant, now enrolled in TechFusion's work-study program, had even helped improve the training modules based on his own experience. "We've had other companies asking about adopting the program," the airline's CEO reported. "This could revolutionize customer service training across industries." Between meetings, Patricia received an unexpected alert. #TechFusionScholars was trending on social media. Students from the first wave of the Future Leaders program were sharing their stories. One post particularly caught her attention, a video of a young girl demonstrating a pollution tracking app she'd developed for her community. "This is why we invested in their potential," Patricia told her team during their afternoon briefing. "We're not just teaching coding, we're empowering them to solve real problems in their communities." Later that day, Patricia visited one of the local schools participating in the program. The computer lab was buzzing with energy as students worked on their projects. In one corner, she noticed a group of girls helping each other debug their code, just like she and Li Wei used to do in college. A young boy tugged at her sleeve. "Miss Chen, can I show you something?" He led her to his computer, where he'd created a simple game teaching financial literacy. "My mom works 2 jobs, he explained, and I want to help her understand investing." Patricia sat down beside him, her heart full. This was exactly what she'd hoped for, children using technology not just to learn, but to lift up their communities. She spent an hour reviewing projects and answering questions, remembering her own early days of discovery and innovation. Back in her office that evening, Patricia hosted a virtual meeting with international partners. The program was expanding to schools in India, Kenya, Brazil, and beyond. Each country was adapting the curriculum to address local needs while maintaining the core mission of increasing diversity in tech. "We're not just building a pipeline of future tech workers," she explained to the global team. "We're nurturing future leaders who understand the importance of inclusive innovation." A notification popped up on her screen. Olivia had posted an update about her coding club. They just completed their first group project, a website showcasing successful women and minorities in tech. The site included interviews they'd conducted, including one with Patricia herself. Reading through their work, Patricia noticed something remarkable. These young students weren't just learning to code, they were building a support network, mentoring each other, and already thinking about how to help the next generation. As the day wound down, Patricia received a call from her mother. "I went through some of Dad's old things," she said, her voice soft with emotion. "I found his rejection letters, all those companies that wouldn't hire him because of his race. But I also found his journal where he wrote about you. He knew you would change things." Patricia thought about how far they'd come, and how far they still had to go. The airport incident had been a reminder that discrimination hadn't disappeared. But it had also shown how one moment, handled with dignity and purpose, could spark transformation. Looking out her office window at the setting sun, Patricia reflected on the past week. What had started as a response to discrimination had evolved into a movement for genuine change. The Future Leaders program wasn't just about creating diversity in tech, it was about reshaping the future itself, one student, one school, one community at a time. Her phone buzzed with one last message for the day. It was a photo from the Detroit school, Aisha's daughter, beaming proudly beside her first completed coding project. The caption read, "Dreams don't have limits anymore. Thank you, Ms. Chen." 2 weeks after the airport incident, Patricia stood on stage at the National Education Technology Conference, facing an audience of thousands. The spotlight felt warm on her face as she prepared to share the preliminary results of the Future Leaders program. Behind her, the screen displayed statistics that even she found remarkable. In just 2 weeks, she began, her voice clear and strong, over 50,000 students have enrolled in our program across 15 countries. But numbers don't tell the whole story. Let me show you what real change looks like. The screen switched to a live video feed showing multiple classrooms around the world, all connected through TechFusion's network. Students from Detroit to Delhi, from Sao Paulo to Sydney, waved excitedly at the camera. Each classroom represented a different success story, a different community being transformed. Yesterday, a student in our Kenya program developed an app to help local farmers track weather patterns, Patricia continued. In Chicago, a group of girls created a safety alert system for their neighborhood. In Mumbai, teenagers are teaching coding to their grandparents. This is what happens when we invest in potential. The presentation was interrupted by unexpected applause when Olivia and her coding club appeared on screen. In 2 weeks, their club had grown from 15 to 50 members, and they'd already organized a local tech fair for their community. After the presentation, Patricia met with a group of education ministers from various countries. They weren't just interested in implementing the program, they wanted to make it part of their national curriculum. It was an opportunity to scale the impact even further, but it also presented new challenges. The key is maintaining quality while expanding access, Patricia explained, pulling up detailed implementation plans on her tablet. We're not just providing computers, we're creating an ecosystem of support, mentorship, and opportunity. Back in her hotel room that evening, Patricia received an urgent call from her office. The young check-in attendant from the airport, now a part-time student in their program, had made an important discovery while working on the airline's training modules. He found a pattern in customer complaint data that we missed, her project leader explained. It turns out the bias incidents weren't random, they were concentrated around certain flight routes and shift patterns. His insight is helping us make the training more targeted and effective. Patricia smiled, remembering her decision to offer him a chance at redemption. Sometimes the best solutions came from those who had been part of the problem. It was a reminder that change wasn't just about programs and policies, it was about transforming hearts and minds. Later that night, she joined a video call with Li Wei in Asia. Their international partnership had already yielded unexpected benefits. Students from different countries were collaborating on projects, breaking down cultural barriers while building technical skills. Remember when we used to dream about changing the tech world? Li Wei asked, nostalgia in her voice. We thought we'd have to fight our way in. Instead, we're building new doors for others to walk through. The next morning brought both good news and new challenges. The program's success had attracted attention from potential investors, but some wanted to modify the initiative in ways that would compromise its core mission. One investor suggested focusing only on high-performing schools to improve success metrics. Patricia's response was firm. The whole point is to reach students who wouldn't otherwise have these opportunities. We're not looking for easy wins, we're trying to create real change. During her lunch break, she received a series of photos from Aisha, the janitor from Detroit. Her daughter had just won first place in a local technology competition, using skills she'd learned in the program. The winning project? A scheduling app to help working parents like her mother manage multiple jobs. The afternoon brought a surprise visitor to her hotel suite, the airline CEO's teenage daughter. My dad told me about what happened at the airport, she said nervously. I started a petition at my school. We want to partner with your program to create an aviation technology track. Not everyone who loves planes gets to become a pilot. Patricia listened intently as the young girl shared her vision. It was another reminder that the impact of that airport incident was still rippling outward in unexpected ways, creating new possibilities and connections. By evening, Patricia was back in her office, reviewing the latest program data. The retention rates were exceptional, over 90% of students were staying engaged with the curriculum. More importantly, the peer mentoring aspects were flourishing. Older students were spontaneously organizing study groups and support networks for newcomers. A notification popped up on her screen. The first batch of TechFusion scholarship applications had arrived. Reading through them, Patricia felt a surge of emotion. Each application told a story of determination, of dreams that had seemed impossible just weeks ago. One application particularly caught her attention. It was from a young girl living in a homeless shelter, who had been using the library's computer to complete the program's online modules. Despite her circumstances, she had maintained perfect attendance in the virtual classes and had even started teaching basic coding to other kids at the shelter. Patricia immediately called her team. We need to expand the program to include housing support for students in crisis, she decided. We can't expect them to focus on learning if they're worried about where they'll sleep. As night fell, Patricia found herself looking at old photos on her phone, pictures of her father in his engineering lab, of her early days struggling to build TechFusion, of the moment she signed her first major contract. Each image represented a barrier broken, a ceiling shattered. Her phone buzzed with a message from Olivia. Ms. Chen, guess what? 3 girls from my coding club got accepted to a national science camp. They said they never would have applied before joining the club. You changed everything. Patricia felt tears welling up in her eyes. The airport incident could have been just another story of discrimination, another moment of humiliation to overcome. Instead, it had become a catalyst for transformation, touching lives in ways she never could have imagined. Looking out at the city lights, Patricia thought about all the young minds being awakened to new possibilities, all the dreams being unleashed, all the barriers being broken. This was more than a program now, it was a movement, a revolution in opportunity, a reimagining of what was possible. 1 month after the airport incident, Patricia stood in the grand ballroom of New York's Plaza Hotel, surrounded by hundreds of people gathered for the official launch of the TechFusion Global Education Initiative. The room buzzed with energy as students, educators, business leaders, and government officials mingled, all united by a vision that had started with a moment of discrimination and blossomed into a worldwide movement. On screens around the room, live feeds showed classrooms across the globe. In one window, students in Lagos were demonstrating their solar power monitoring system. In another, teenagers in Vancouver were teaching coding to senior citizens. A group from Mumbai was presenting their pollution tracking app, while students in Chicago shared their community safety network. 1 month ago, Patricia began her keynote speech. I stood at an airport check-in counter, facing a familiar kind of rejection. Today, I stand before you to share what happened next. She paused, scanning the room. But this isn't my story anymore. It belongs to all of us. The first student to take the stage was Olivia, whose coding club had grown into a nationwide network of young tech enthusiasts. Before I met Ms. Chen, I thought tech was for other people, she said, her voice strong and clear. Now I know that innovation doesn't care what you look like or where you come from. It only cares about what you can dream and what you're willing to work for. Next came the former check-in attendant, now a successful student in TechFusion's work-study program. His voice trembled as he spoke about how one moment of bias had led him to confront his own prejudices and transform his life. The airline's new training program, which he had helped develop, was now being adopted by companies across the service industry. The presentations continued, each story building on the last. Aisha's daughter demonstrated the financial management app she'd created, which was already helping dozens of families in her community. The airline CEO's daughter unveiled plans for an aviation technology program that would open doors for underrepresented youth in the aerospace industry. Li Wei joined virtually from Singapore, announcing the expansion of the program across Asia. What Patricia started isn't just about technology, she said. It's about believing in human potential, about seeing people for who they can become, not just who they are today. As Patricia returned to the podium, she noticed Mr. Wong wiping tears from his eyes. The board chairman who had initially questioned the program's massive budget was now its biggest advocate. The success stories and tangible impact had exceeded even the most optimistic projections. The numbers tell one story, Patricia continued, gesturing to the statistics displayed behind her. Over 100,000 students enrolled. 15,000 projects completed. 250 communities transformed. But the real story isn't in the numbers, it's in the lives being changed, the dreams being realized, the barriers being broken. She shared the story of the homeless student who had been using library computers, announcing a new housing support initiative for students in crisis. Success shouldn't depend on having a permanent address, she declared, as the audience erupted in applause. The event reached its climax with a surprise announcement. The president, speaking via video link, declared the creation of a national task force on technology education equity, with Patricia appointed as its chair. What began as a response to discrimination has become a model for national change, the president said. But it was what happened next that truly captured the spirit of the movement. A group of students from different countries took the stage, presenting their collaborative project, a global platform connecting young innovators across borders, languages, and cultures. We call it Bridge, they explained, because that's what Ms. Chen taught us technology should be, a bridge between people, between communities, between dreams and reality. As the presentation concluded, Patricia's mother approached the stage, carrying a familiar object, her father's old engineering notebook. Your father wrote something in here 30 years ago, she said, her voice filled with emotion. He wrote, "My daughter will build bridges where others see walls." He knew, Patricia. He always knew. The evening ended with an unexpected scene. The students, without prompting, began sharing their own stories of overcoming discrimination, each one ending with how they planned to help others overcome similar challenges. It had become a chain reaction of empowerment and support. Back in her hotel room that night, Patricia received one final surprise, a video compilation from students around the world. Each clip showed a young person sharing their dream, their project, their vision for the future. The last clip was from a small girl in a rural village, speaking in her native language with English subtitles. Ms. Chen showed us that when someone tries to shut a door in your face, you don't just open it, you hold it open for others to walk through too. Patricia sat at her desk, overwhelmed by the day's events. She opened her laptop to find thousands of social media posts about the launch, each telling a story of impact and transformation. The hashtag #TechFusionBridge was trending worldwide. Looking out at the city lights, Patricia thought about how differently things might have turned out if she had responded to that airport incident with anger instead of vision, with revenge instead of reform. One moment of discrimination had become a catalyst for global change, not because of what had happened to her, but because of how she had chosen to respond. Her phone buzzed with a message from Li Wei. "Remember when we were the only ones who looked like us in our engineering classes? Today, I watched a classroom full of girls who look like we did, coding and dreaming and knowing they belong. You didn't just change the game, Patricia. You changed the future." As she prepared for bed, Patricia noticed one last email, from the airline's customer service department. It was their latest satisfaction survey results, showing the highest scores in company history. Attached was a note from the CEO. "You taught us that true service means seeing the humanity in every person who walks through our doors. Thank you for showing us a better way."